When I moved home to Cape Breton, my mom was living in a really big brown house. It's huge, the biggest one on the street. It's separated into two apartments. And she was upstairs and there was an older lady living downstairs. So when I moved in, things started to begin happening, and they didn't happen before I arrived. And when I moved out for a short period, it stopped again until I moved back. So clearly all of the things that are happening in the house are attracted and connected to me somehow.
The world is not always a pleasant place. Violent crimes can be a fact of life. But what if these crimes aren't limited to our everyday world, but are part of the paranormal world as well? Hi, I'm Lawrence Chow. Today in Ghostly Encounters, Kirsten Johnston tells us her experience of a crime from beyond the grave. Kirsten suspects the ghostly activity is related to her presence, but what she doesn't realize is just how violent and how brutal that activity is.
When I moved into the house with my mom, everything was normal. It was a good time. I had left a really bad relationship, so it was kind of a time of healing for me. My son was only about 10 months old. We were sharing a bedroom, and it was quiet for a long time, just normal. And then one night, out of the blue, we started hearing noises coming from downstairs. And it was focused underneath my bedroom where I was sleeping at the time. It was the bedroom below there. And it was really loud, booming, dragging, like as if you're pushing a dresser across the floor, and you know how loud that can be. And it was like that, but a constant, like not just one, but like drag, 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 boom, boom, constant loud noises. So you're going, God, what? It needs to stop down there, because it was for about an hour every night. And we kind of initially were like, what's going on down there? Because the lady who lived downstairs at the time, she was in her late 60s. She was an ex-nun. She was very quiet. And we were thinking, what is she doing down there at this hour of night? So for one night, it wasn't a big deal. But then it started happening every other night, and it was loud, and it would go on for at least an hour until we got to the point where I thought, you know, we really need to ask her what's going on down there, because it was bothersome. One night in the summer, we were upstairs watching TV, and it was the regular 11 to 12 time frame, and the noises started downstairs, and it was thunderous. And I went out, and I'm like, Mom, do you hear that? And she's like, yeah, it's really, really loud. And so I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go downstairs and see if she's awake. I went downstairs, and I went outside, and I circled the whole perimeter of the house. I was more scared of what was happening in my house than I was of what could be outside. And I'm looking in her windows for any sign of life, a light, movement, something that would tell me that she was awake. And I thought, if she's awake, I can talk to her. And I went around the whole house, and it was pitch black. You know, not a movement, not a sound. I went downstairs the next day, and I said to her, you know, what's going on down there every night? What are you doing at 11 and 12, you know, night? And she looked at me very strangely, and she said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, it sounds like you're moving furniture all around the room. There's something going on. What are you doing? She said, Kirsten, I'm in bed by 9:30 every night. I haven't heard anything. What do you mean? And at that point, I'm just kind of like, what? Something's happening here. She's not doing it. I thought, how am I going to deal with this? It's hard to describe how you feel because there's something happening in your house and you don't know what it is and you can't stop it. We didn't think, oh God, it's got to be ghosts. That didn't happen until later. I thought, how am I going to deal with this? You know, there's so many emotions going through your head. Who is it? What's happening? How do I make it go away? I wasn't frightened when I went around the house. I was more frightened when I got back in and realized that it wasn't her. It's something else. Well, I moved back to Halifax not long after that happened. And I stayed for about, 6 months, and then I decided to come home for good. So when I came back home, the lady downstairs was moving out. And I decided to take the apartment because it was perfect for me, where I was going to work. My mother could babysit. It was just, I didn't give any thought to the things that had happened downstairs. Until we were all on the step one afternoon, and my neighbor from across the street, Miriam, she came over and we were talking about what had happened. And then Miriam said very matter-of-factly, well, maybe it's the people that were murdered in your house. And we all went, what? Collective gasp, and everybody's jaw dropped because we had no idea. And she's like, oh, you didn't know? We're like, no. And so she told us that in the late 70s, 2 people were murdered in my bedroom. I believe that there's energy attached to anywhere where something bad happened. And I think it stays for maybe forever. There's a constant feeling in my house of being watched all the time. You're never alone. You're in the kitchen, you get that feeling on the back of your neck and you know someone's in the room with you. And most of the time it's okay. I'll be like, it's a little uncomfortable, but you just, you work with it and you just go about, doing what you're doing. But it's unnerving. You have to understand, in my house, it's all hardwood floors. So every step you make, you can hear it. It's very creaky and very loud. It's a really old house. So one night, when I went to bed, I could hear someone walking into my room. It was very clear, distinct footsteps, creak, 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 creak. I could see a very distinct figure of a man. I can't see through him. He's solid black, but featureless. I think maybe in his case, he doesn't want me to see him. It's more terrifying to me to not be able to see the face. And he was leaning right over my bed, and he was whispering just a constant, chatter in my ear. He was close enough, almost if I'd reached out, I could have touched him, but I didn't do that. There was no way I was going to do that. You don't really know what to think because you're frightened and you're kind of paralyzed almost because you don't really know how to react or what to do. And I closed my eyes and waited for him to go. And then when I opened them, he was gone. And all of a sudden, off to the corner, I could hear a man and a woman talking to each other. Just a peaceful, quiet conversation in the corner of my room. It wasn't anything scary, just 2 voices in the darkness. And it was a muffled sound, kind of like, you know, how you can hear someone in the apartment next to you, but you can't really make out what they're saying. And it only lasted about 5 or 10 minutes, and then it was gone. So I wasn't really scared. They weren't frightening. They aren't frightening spirits at all. It's the other spirit. He is, I don't know how else to describe him, but evil and dark and menacing.
The ghostly activity in Kirsten's apartment seems to be increasing. However, our expert Patty Allen believes things are not that simple. It may be the case that the ghostly activity has remained the same, but what has changed is Kirsten's ability to perceive it. Like any sense, the ability to perceive the spirit realm improves with use. But Kirsten's new insight is a mixed blessing because her experiences are about to get far more frightening.
One night, I was getting ready for bed. I had been, you know, I washed my face and did all this stuff. It was very quiet. My little boy was in bed sleeping. And I was taking some garbage out to the porch. It's around that corner. I can't stand there. When I stand in that corner, I feel cold. I feel sick to my stomach. I feel awful. And so I put the garbage out on the porch, and I came back in. And when I rounded the corner, there was a man right there in my kitchen. He terrified me. I couldn't breathe. Everything, if I had been holding on to anything, it would have shattered to the ground because it was one of those moments where you're not expecting someone to be there and then bam, there they are. And I couldn't see a face. It was just like when it was upstairs. And so I put the garbage out the porch, and I came back in. And when I rounded the corner, it was an immediate feeling of menace and evil and dark. And it's so instantaneous, it's hard to make someone understand, you know, if they've never been through it, how you get a feeling of someone instantly. He wanted to scare me. Because he frightened me so badly, I almost banged into him. You know, I ran at the corner and he was right there, and I just was like, oh my God. And I recoiled and I was holding my chest because he terrified me. And I think then he just vanished into thin air like he hadn't even been there. And that was frightening. I couldn't even breathe. Couldn't think straight. I was scared, you know? And that's the first time he had done that. I think he lives to intimidate me. I think that he thrives on my fear. And I think maybe that's what got his attention, because when I first came to the house, I was broken. You know, my spirit was crushed. And so I was trying to heal, and I think maybe he recognized that and, you know, fed on it, because they thrive on your energy. That's how they exist. And so I think that maybe my fear is what drew him to me initially, and then my strength is what made him angry. My son went to his father's for a weekend, so I was alone in the house. And it was the middle of the night. And I woke up, and I couldn't move. It's like something is on your chest, on your whole body, and your arms are pinned down, so you're almost like this. And you can't move. And it's really terrifying because you feel so vulnerable and helpless. You can't be more vulnerable than when you're in bed at night by yourself and you're looking around and you can see everything and your senses are alive and you can smell and think and, you know, but you cannot move. When negative things happen in my house, I know who's responsible. And when the male spirit gets angry, it affects me physically. It's not even like it's him on top of you. It's almost like he's controlling you. It's hard to describe it. It's like there's a presence, you feel it, it's menacing, it's evil. He doesn't like you, and he's gonna show you. And it lasts for quite a while. It's a lot longer than when they appear at your bed and whisper in your ear. This is something altogether different. It's pretty frightening. And I think he knew that. That's what he wanted. I'm a writer, so one day my editor asked me to do a story on the Ghost Walk tour in the north end of our city. When I was doing it, he said, you know, do you have any stories of your own that we could incorporate, Kirsten? And I'm like, oh yeah, I've got some stories. I decided to go to the library to do some research and find out what exactly had happened. And I found out that 2 people were murdered in my bedroom, that they had been set on fire and left to die. I'm a writer, so my editor asked me, you know, do you have any stories of your own? I decided to go to the library to do some research and find out what exactly had happened. And I found out that in April of 1976, a woman had moved in there. She had left her abusive ex-boyfriend and she was starting over. And so she moved downstairs and she had someone living upstairs. One night, there was a very bad argument with her and her current boyfriend and an ex-boyfriend. And it was very heated and very loud, and apparently the lady upstairs heard this. But she didn't think anything of it because it quieted down and he went home and that was the end of it. Everybody went to bed. Well, later that night, he came back to the house and he set fire to the bedroom. Unfortunately, they didn't escape and they died there. When I found out about the murders, it made sense to me that what would you do if you were caught in a burning room? You would go for the windows. You would try to get out the door. Anything you could do to escape and live. I have the impression that he stood in that corner when he murdered them, that he set the room on fire, and then he came and he stood in that corner to make sure they couldn't get out of the room. He just stood there and he listened to them scream, listened to them try to get out as they burned. What kind of person does that? That's a person you should be scared of in life. You should be scared of him in the spirit world too. When you live with this kind of thing every day, you get used to it and it's just part of the house. It's part of the history. It's part of your life. And you either leave and don't accept it or stay and try to coexist with them peacefully.
Many psychic investigators believe the violent nature of a murder makes it more likely that the dead have not moved on. Some also believe victims can share a spiritual link with their murderer, much like the reputed eternal bonds between lovers or soulmates. Maybe then, any deep connection increases the possibility spirits will remain in our world, and a negative connection increases the chance that ghostly activity will be hostile. Kirsten's experience shows the power some connections hold for those involved. In this case, a brutal crime immortalizes an evil murderer, and damns his 2 young victims to relive their deaths forever.
I always felt okay with the afterlife. I believe that there's something out there for all of us after we die. Absolutely, I do. And these people are trapped here. And it makes me really sad for them. See, I have to try to find compassion. Even if I find it scary or frightening, imagine what it's like for them, you know, to be trapped there for 30, 40 years, reliving the same thing over and over, unable to find peace, unable to be reunited with their loved ones. It's sad. So I think I have a deeper understanding now of, the spirit world and what comes after.
For more ghostly encounters, go to myviva.ca/ghostly encounters.